we are a quorum plus, and we have an audience, and I'd say we ought to get underway.
See, I pulled this
All
out.
right. Okay. So, am I ready to go? Are we on?
Yes, you're live.
Oh, we're on. Okay, well, here we are.
Roll call.
It is the 20th of August, 5:01. I'm going to call this meeting of the CRCRC to order. We'll start with roll call.
Brian Ryder is more or less here.
Jay Van Babel.
Dave Bench.
Duke Garwood.
Tom Farrell.
Okay. Moving on to agenda item or regular consent agenda. We have two items on here, and just for the sake of expediency, we just added them to the consent agenda, so we don't have to review them too much. I presume that you've all had a chance to look at it. I do know that with regard to the lighting recommendations, that I got a note from Jerry Fleming indicating that there's a typo on one of the lines. I don't know, Ashley, did you get that note? It's the word "by" is missing from one sentence. That's all that it is.
Okay.
And okay,
What is that?
so
That's the typo, that's what he sent.
Oh, I have the, Jerry sent it to you?
yeah, Jerry sent it. Yeah.
Okay.
So if
Yeah,
we,
I'll take
did
I'll
you
take
get
that
it?
meeting. I didn't get it, but I'll take it.
that's as far as I know, that's the only comment there are on either of these two documents. So with that, do I have a motion on?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the addition of the typo on the lighting agenda, proposal, where we add the word by.
Thank you.
I second the motion.
All right, we got a motion, we got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, it's carried. Okay.
Jerry said he was gonna be here tonight. I guess it's just too long a walk from his house to here.
Well, I would not be surprised if he doesn't.
My car said 105 when I drove up.
I think he's fascinated by all
One
this.
question, Chairman. These two items then will go to PNC next.
They will.
Okay.
They will not go to city council. They will go to P and Z first.
Okay.
Are we good? Does that make you happy, Dave?
I'm always happy when PNC chairman is happy.
All
He's
right.
happy.
All right, we're all happy. All right. Discussion, we're gonna move on to regular agenda item number 4, discussion and possible action of recommended building height text, starting with the suggested rules document, item 4. And what, as you'll recall, when we met last, we were going through an email from Amy Patillo, and included in that email was a document that Alex had written that was called Suggested Height Recommendations, or Suggested Height Rules. Here he is. And
There's Jerry.
and we stopped on item number 4, which is the thing about adding an additional 5 feet to the rear of a lot of height in the back of the house. Now, at 4 o'clock, I had an epiphany.
Did you bring enough for all of us to smoke?
Now, there's anybody who knows me well knows that I have a real affinity for Raisin Bran. I'm a big fan of Raisin Bran. I recommend it highly. What I have here is a model of the parallel
We can on the agenda here.
This is Ryan Clinton.
Well, it is, but
It's
actually,
not a water
I don't think you're gonna have a
visual.
Yeah,
it's
it's
a
not,
cardboard visual.
but it is a cardboard box. It's true, and I spared no expense in providing this 3D graphical aid. But what it, as you all know by now, I think, that this model represents a parallel plane, and in that model, you would have here the bottom part of this box would be the native ground, okay?
A certified survey.
The certified survey, thank you, even better, okay? This isn't to scale, but assume that this this vertical dimension is 35 feet, okay? So what we have here is our certified survey. We add 35 feet to it, and we get a parallel plane to it. This is the parallel plane.
Except for if you have variations in the terrain, you're gonna have variations in the parallel
But they
plane.
will be identical.
Yes,
That's right.
but it's not a flat plane.
It's not. This is this most simple model.
And I think that's what's been hard for some people to understand, that it's not a
Maybe you need a
totally
second box that you have bent so that it's,
hammered holes.
I
in it.
came up with
It's
this
on
at
the
4
front of-
o'clock today, you know, maybe I can, you know, but for the moment, now.
Do that for you.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
There you go.
We can crunch this thing up, I don't know, but nonetheless, okay. Now, Alex and Duke and I met this past Friday to talk about what Alex's words were with regard to adding 5 feet to the rear of a lot such that you could do a walkout basement easily. Okay?
Forget rear.
Okay?
You can add.
Correct me.
Yeah, you can add 5 feet.
You can add 5 feet, okay. All right, now, take this model, okay? Let's call that 5 feet, this little bend here. And what this says, what we're talking about in this discussion, is that you can take, if you've got a walkout basement, for instance, you can now establish a floor by excavation that is 5 feet below the surveyed surface and get 40 feet to here. We
does
would
that
allow-
apply to the front of the lot as well as the back of the lot?
No, front's out, front's out.
I mean, here's the bottom line. You can add 5 feet, okay? That
By digging
excavation,
down.
that excavation's gotta be 20 feet offset from either side setback, okay? So you can't build out to a 10 or a 15-foot setback. You gotta be offset 20 feet
20 feet,
from side to side and from the rear. I mean, that's the rear setback.
that's right.
So that means that the eave at the edges, the thing that's most critical, that max can only be 40 feet. Okay? And then you can have up to 45 feet if you have a slope route and it's a minimum 3 and 12 pitch.
And that, at the pitch point, and that peak point, and that would need to be somewhere inside, yeah, right, exactly. Thank you. Nicely done.
And you went
Okay.
to school all this time, and they could just do this for the
Well,
block.
let me ask
Let me
you
tell
a
you what,
question.
I went to school,
I don't
so
quite
I could
understand.
draw a straight line.
If you excavate
for the most part.
10 feet of the building area,
Yeah,
can you build up to 40 feet across the entire building area, or just above that area?
just within the buildable area, if I'm understanding your
No.
question right.
You can excavate that additional number of feet that fit within that requirement is within those setbacks.
See, what
But
we-
you, in order to get the 5 feet extra, you would have to excavate it the entire length of the house if you want the 5 feet to go the entire length of the house,
Well,
right?
what you're asking is, can the entire wall be 40 feet, or does only a portion of it? And it would apply in either case. If you only decided to have a walkout basement, but you left the natural grade the way that it was for the rest of it, it would be just
All
fine.
right,
You'd still
so-
be 35 feet.
If I build a basement
Yeah,
that is 5 feet by 5 feet, and I say, okay, now I can build the rest of my house up to 45 feet.
That's Jay's question.
I know.
That's my question.
I agree with, I'm trying to visualize this, and I'm guessing the answer would be that we should make the answer, wherever you build that 5 by 5 area, then you go up to 45 feet, but not the rest of it.
Only the basement portion,
Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
all right.
only the
Alright.
built-out basement.
Okay.
You know, we're using the word basement because it's excavated, okay? I mean, it may be truly a living space.
And if you wanted 5 feet all across your building, you would have to excavate all across your building.
You'd have to build out, and it's measured from the finished floor.
So, that's without doing, okay, in the finished floor, without having done any excavation, would be this flap here. But if we excavate, now the finished floor is 5 feet down, okay? Yeah, but it continues in a horizontal plane below. So all of our measurements come off of that. But 5 feet is all we get.
And this applies to any lot, whether it's sloped or not.
Well, you know, if you wouldn't have a walkout basement on
It does, I mean, if you had a flat lot and you wanted to have just a bunker basement down there, yes, you could do it. But the whole point of trying to make this exception is because it's gonna be most advantageous to a slope lot. Okay, so it tries to,
If you had a
it tries
flat
to
lot and you
eliminate
built
the
a
number
and you
of
dug the
special
5.
exceptions we're gonna take to the Board of Adjustment.
See,
Jay, it seems to me that if you had a flat lot and you dug 5 feet down,
Yeah.
you're not getting, you're now below the street
that.
by
That's right.
definition, and so then what are you doing? You're gonna have, you're gonna go down into
You're just having a bunker space down there.
Right.
You're not
your
trying
garage?
to,
Well, I guess you would be digging down,
it's a
right?
man cave, let's just call
We
it.
we would allow you, I guess, to go down 5
it's a true
feet,
basement.
right? And,
Into your garage, and
Into
then
your
above
garage,
that
if you
garage,
want,
that
yeah.
garage,
Yeah.
you would have a total of 40 feet.
that's right, to the east,
But from the street level,
yeah.
it would appear to be 35 feet
Ah.
The
because
bottom line is
Because-
you're not breaking the 35-foot parallel plane.
We're not allowing you to do it in the front of the house.
See,
where does that say?
Well,
Under the excavation allowance language,
okay,
I don't think it says that.
there's building height may be increased below the parallel when starting a minimum of 20 feet horizontal from the side or rear property lines as follows. Only from the side.
Side or rear, okay.
Okay. Does that help, or do we need more clarity in there?
Now, what I think we do need clarity is the other point Jay raised, which is that the only part of the building that has the 40-foot allowance or the 45-foot allowance is as to that portion of the building that has been excavated, that is above the excavated area. Is that correct, or am I wrong about that?
The 40-foot is specifically talked about because that's what the worst case condition you can have at the eave. Okay? And then you can slope up to 45 feet. Alright? But the 40 feet is mentioned here because that's the worst case at the edge.
But
And
it's the edge of the box, it's the edge of the excavated area.
Correct.
This is Jay's question, if you did, or maybe it's Tom's question, or maybe it's my mess of the two of them. If you did the 5 by 5, does that mean that you can then have 40 feet across the whole front,
No,
or back, or whatever
The
it
back,
might be?
yes.
no. Whatever we need to, I mean,
Yeah, it just seems to me that the
I hope
building
it is.
height may be increased below the parallel plane by way of excavation when starting at a minimum of 20 feet horizontal from the side or rear property lines as follows. A should say something like, as to the portion of the building above the excavated area, 40 feet above the finished floor.
I think that makes sense to me.
if that helps,
40 feet
I'm good
above
with that.
the,
It says as to, where it says A, as to the portion of the building above the excavated area, 40 feet above finished floor for the uppermost surface of the eave parapet.
40 feet above portion of the building above the excavated area.
And it'd have the same preference, I think you have the same preface to B as to the portion of the building
That's fine.
above the excavated area, 45 feet above finished floor for a ridge line of sloped roof, which has a minimum of 3 to 12.
You good with that?
Yeah. Hey, he's the wordsmith.
I like it,
If that's-
yeah,
If that's a
if-
little tighter and,
if it brings clarity, you bet.
So I had one question, Jay, that, that you and I talked about earlier.
Right, okay, okay, let's see if the words are right. If, are we agreed that these words, what you're recommending that add, will that make this be okay?
I'm satisfied with it.
Are you satisfied? Okay, good, all
he's
right,
good,
now,
I'm good.
now Tom and I had some discussion earlier about whether or not this constitutes a special exception or not.
No.
No, that's
No,
not
this
what
is a
I'm.
general
Oh,
rule.
I thought
That's
that was
not-
what we wanted to
No,
do.
my point was,
This eliminates it as a special
Well,
exception to
well,
me.
my question was, should we have this in the ordinance right here, where it's written as is, or should this be some language that should go into our special exception, provision that says, this is language and this is where the special exception would come into play?
What you would do with that, Tom, is instead of making it something that the architect and our building official and the reviewing architect have to look at, you've made it a process by which we have to call hearings and have records
That's right.
and do all the rest of that, and I don't think that's necessary.
And it may not be. As I told Dave, I'm okay either way, but we started with a provision that said, we voted as a group and said, we're gonna have nothing over 35 feet.
And then we
Now we
started
are
hearing,
having
then we
over
started
35
hearing
Okay.
what you guys have done is, and we need to,
And the,
adjust.
and the guy,
And I'm
Yeah.
okay with this because this is in response to comments we received from
Exactly.
citizens. And so we're addressing that, which is the proper thing
Exactly.
to do. But since we started with that no more than 35 feet, I thought, well, okay, you can still keep the 35 feet if you put this as one of the provisions that said a special exception language. This is part of that would go into the special exception area.
now,
It's just a thought.
All
I can
right,
go
and-
either way.
and I thought that what we're here to do is to make recommendations as to what we think the height ought to be and how it should be measured. We could leave the decision as to whether it's a special exception or not to either P and Z or city council.
well, it's going to go through that process, and it's gonna be open to that in any case, whether we do it or not, it's
That's
gonna be
right.
open to that process,
Well,
Dave.
what would, if we were to weigh in on this, what is our recommendation?
As I told you, my deal is I can live with it either place. I think Brian makes a good point. No use making somebody jump through a hoop we don't have to make them jump through. But the special exception is going to, we have an open area on the special exception. One of the things that's gonna come up on that is an attorney is gonna want some specified language as to when he can grant a special exception and what you can grant. This would fit in that. I just want that to be an option for P and Z and council to do when they go down the road. I'm okay with it right now.
You want us to recommend that we
No.
don't care?
No, I think we do care.
I think we should recommend that it's a part of the description of what is the parallel plane
Yeah.
conditions.
I wanted,
It's part of the guidelines.
I
I
wanted this to
agree
be.
with that because it's a concession to.
It is.
Concerned citizens,
And
and
I have no problem with this
they
being in
shouldn't have to
there.
go through a special exception
I
to
think
get that
though that
concession.
I wanted us to at least have this discussion and be part of the record as it went forward, which we've done. And as I told you, Dave, I'm okay with it being here
Okay.
or in a special exception.
All right.
But I wanted that to be part of our record go forward, that we looked at that. and
Yes.
thought about that.
Well, that's fair, but going forward, we are making this a recommendation that is not a special exception, we're building it into the ordinance.
Correct.
That's okay.
Okay, now,
Totally.
okay.
So,
Okay.
the discussion of these two items has been in play since April,
Yeah.
okay? I mean, it's been kicked around. It's not brand new as such. I just want to state that because it's something we've talked about all along. In the end, we're not violating the 35-foot, parallel plane that we've sort of adhered to.
It's a principle.
It's everything below, okay? I think it's important that what this does reflect is, yeah, we've listened and we've learned and we've,
Yep.
in some way, if you want to say we've moved off of what our previous position was. But again, this has always been in our discussion. We just haven't nailed it down. And the other thing is that, to me, this was an effort to not have it in the arena of special exceptions, to limit what those adverse circumstances would be, so there would be fewer things that would go to the Board of Adjustment.
Right.
So I'm totally for this being
Okay.
in the ordinance per se.
The beauty of this little thing is that we do adhere to the parallel plane concept in that even though we're digging down below, the plane itself does not move.
Correct.
We're still in the same elevation that we originally surveyed in. And that keeps it from overwhelming the neighbors,
Well,
right?
particularly
Which is
if
part
it's-
of our goal.
Yeah, and guess what? It has some numerical value that relates back to our current ordinance.
Yeah.
And I think that'll make some people go, oh, okay.
Yep.
I mean,
fundamentally,
There's a
what
little
we've
value in
done, our current ordinance has so many different ways of playing it, or with slight variations over the years, that we're just trying to bring some certainty
Yeah.
to it. Although, the fact that we've had to get this complicated is a demonstration of how complicated the situation
It
is.
is, yeah.
no, it is.
Given the multiple terrains that have to be dealt with in Rollingwood.
Well, and you're trying to fight the paradox of, hey, let's make it restricted in certain ways, but let's keep it simple. That's
We've
a-
kind of lost the, let's keep it simple from the.
I understand, but hey, guess what? Comparatively speaking, it's reasonably simple.
Okay, it is rationally simple. I'm with that. All
I
right.
used to bring the Austin McMansion ordinance, and I quit doing
Now-
that, but, I could,
Don't do it.
don't go there.
Are we ready for
All right.
Well, we're almost. I just want to call attention to the fact that to these words, I've added a definition of a parallel plane. They were above there. And that needed to be stated. We had never really defined what the parallel plane is. So, we talked about everything being 35 feet and all that, but this actually defines it. Parallel plane is an imaginary plane 35 feet above the parallel and parallel to the original native ground surface. No part of a building or structure, exclusive of exceptions outlined below, may break this plane. Are we good with those words?
What exceptions do we have now that do break the plane? Because if
The
you're excavating
excavation.
down, you're not breaking the
Well,
plane.
we do have one exception, and that
That's
is
the
if
dormer?
we have, there's the,
We have the dormers.
Chimney.
the dormers aren't really an exception.
Yeah, the dormers are an
Dormers
exception
aren't
to the
allowed
tenting
penetrate the
concept,
plane. They're not
but
allowed
not
to
to
do
the
it
plane.
either, yeah. So, it's for the drainage easements or, floodplain. We've just given them an additional 5 feet. That 5 feet could go over the parallel plane.
I'm sorry Alex isn't here to give me a quiet instruction of something to go look at where that has been done.
It
Do-
probably hasn't.
Are there any examples of that in the community that we could look at to see where an additional height has been justified by being in a floodplain or in a drainage area?
You must not have been at the meeting where we talked about this, okay?
I missed one, and that's
Okay,
right.
that was it, yeah. What we
I was
had
up in
done,
New York.
one of the public who has been attending here, had asked us to consider, because Austin does it, should we give additional height should you find your lot in a floodplain? And floodplains change, you know, 10 years,
They
they
do.
do surveys.
They do.
All of a sudden, this is the new 100-year floodplain, you know? So if you find yourself in that situation, you want to build, could you get a height allowance to accommodate that? And we voted, yes, we'll do that. Maximum 5 feet. Okay, so that, we're finished with that. Now, what that would do is if you go in and you
Is
do your
that-
native
that's
survey,
within the
that'll
flood-
put you above 5.
That's within the floodplain area, right? It's only within the floodplain area.
That's
It's just
right.
like the excavation language.
But I mean, if the floodplain restricts your buildable area, okay,
Yes.
then you can have a smaller footprint and a taller volume.
So it's not building, that's right, you're not building in the floodplain. So it's not like the excavation. It's not like that there's a natural given excavation. It's that.
That was the intent, Brian. I'm not sure that it says that explicitly.
What we said, and this is the language now, floodplain drainage easements, here, this is a special exception, should some portion of a buildable area reside on or near a floodplain or drainage easement, and it can be shown that such would have extreme adverse impact on the lot's buildable potential, an owner may seek relief from these requirements by special exception granted by the Board of Adjustment. In such cases, the board may grant an exception for up to 5 feet of additional building height.
See,
What does the word near mean in this case? That's the thing that I circled on there. Should we ask Bill Clinton, because he knows what is means?
Yeah.
What is near?
Well,
should it read adjacent? Would that make it better?
you know,
Might, I mean, I wasn't here for
Right.
that discussion,
That's
Tom,
right.
so I'm not
Yeah,
absolutely
it's-
sure.
it's-
I don't think
it's a
we
fine
can
question.
discuss-
You're
It's a
helping.
fine question.
You're
It's
helping
fine.
us, so
It's
go
fine.
for it.
It's
Yeah,
fine.
I'm not
Okay.
fussing about it, believe me.
I think you understand what we're trying to do.
I'm trying to get my head around
Okay,
it. Duke's
all right.
idea that, okay,
Right.
if you're restricted because your lot has floodplain on it,
Yeah,
you can go higher,
okay.
but,
I think the word adjacent sounds fine.
You good? Okay. We can-
Brian, remember though, this is not automatic. You still have to go to the board. of
Still have to go to the
adjustment.
board. This is an exception. And our thinking is, this will happen so infrequently that a special exception is really warranted. So, is adjacent the word, or you said it?
I like that a lot better than near.
Okay,
Adjacent means touching or in contact in my concept.
okay,
And in reality, you know, if it was a floodplain, you could build over the floodplain if you got a foot above it and you proved that you didn't displace, you know, there's a whole bunch of technical issues.
Yeah,
But
you can
if there's
fill
a
to a
drainage
certain degree,
easement-
or you can put it up on
If
stilts.
there's a drainage
yes.
easement, you can't be in it. So,
We just don't
It's-
have very many drainage easements, I'm gonna tell you that now.
well, I think.
Do we have
again, I
more as a
think
result
Amy's
of what
is a
the
drainage
project that's
easement,
going on right
And
now?
it may have been increased to a floodplain, I don't know,
I don't know, right?
yeah.
But again,
if adjacent will meet it, we'll make that change. I want to motion that even before we get to the other, because
All right.
it's critical here, okay?
You want me to do the motion
You
since I
motion
raised
it.
the
Yeah,
issue?
please
I'll-
do, yeah.
All right, with respect to special exceptions, we still have a block of text above that I have some questions about.
Okay, okay.
With respect to CRCRC recommendations approved 723, I was not present for that. Should some portion of the buildable area reside on or be adjacent to a floodplain? I make the motion that the language be changed in the first line to read that like that.
Okay, we have a motion,
second.
second, all right, we have a motion second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
No? Opposed? Good. Carries. Good. All right, let's go back to parallel plane definition and excavation allowance. All right? You satisfied with parallel plane now? It
Yeah,
does, in
yeah,
fact,
what
point-
I'm,
okay.
I'm
Okay.
still, I'm the only one I've got at the top of whatever page that's in our material, that the block of text that I want to consider is CRC approval, March 1824. I don't remember whether I was on the committee at that point or not, but
Actually, I remember, yes, you were.
What page is that?
You were.
where I want to go is the new underlined provision. It says, and providing that unusual topographic variations with a width of less than 25 feet, including pools, ponds, basements, rock outcroppings, and natural drainage ways, shall not be included when establishing imaginary planes.
Yeah.
I have no problem with the concept. We're dealing with my knolls and holes
That's exactly right.
issue. But I don't know that 25 feet is the proper standard.
Okay, what I want, let's get through this, we're gonna pick that up, all right? I knew you would wanna do this, so we talked about this on Friday as well. All right?
He predicted that.
Yeah, that's right, this is it.
I'm such a known
I
troublemaker, you
had-
can figure out what I have to.
I had another epiphany on Sunday morning. I said, Brian's gonna bring up Knowles and Holes. And we didn't do anything with it.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right, so we came up with some words, okay? But please, let's get back here. Parallel plane, is the definition all right?
Yep.
All right, you wanna make a motion to that?
I make a motion that the parallel plane is defined as described as, we approve that.
Okay, all right, and we have a motion,
Second?
okay? Any further discussion?
I just want to clarify, that's this entire block of text under the title residential building height measurement, CRC, down to where
No, it is this text, the blue text under the word
Okay,
proposed.
I didn't print in color, I'm
Just
sorry.
this, okay, just that, those 3 lines there, that is.
I'm perfectly happy with that, and I hope that the predicting committee did not assume that I would have a problem with that.
They did not. They-
I don't.
Okay.
Okay,
All right,
I'm in favor.
all right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes carry. Here we go. Man, we're rolling. All right, okay. Now, down to exception allowance. What we have is, okay,
I think we've
as a
already-
portion of the building above the excavated area, building height as to the portion of the building may be increased below. Now, that was the only change to this text that was discussed. I'd like to get a motion on this, if we're comfortable with those words.
Well, the first 2 sentences are good, and then
Yeah.
under A, you're gonna insert as to the.
Excuse me, you're right, you're right.
As
I
to
can't
the
even read
portion
my
of
own
the
writing.
building above the excavated area,
That's right. Now, the building height may be increased below the parallel plane by way of excavation when starting a minimum of 20 feet horizontal from the side or rear property lines as follows. As to the portion of the building above the excavated area 40 feet above finished floor for uppermost surface of eave or parapet, and 45 feet, using the same words.
the same
Same words.
insertion before
Yeah.
45 feet above finished floor for ridge line.
Okay? We good with that? All right, do we have a motion?
Move approval with that amendment, with that language placed in the beginning of both A and B.
Okay, okay, we have a motion?
Second it.
We have a second? Second?
Yes.
Thank you, okay,
Actually, do you have that motion?
okay,
I do not, all I have is moved approval of the amendment with the changes to A and B, so if we
Okay.
wanna be more clear, we can, if
So-
not,
Inserted before A and B, the 40 and 45 feet is to read,
as to the portion of building above the excavated area, 40 feet above finished floor for uppermost surface of eave parapet. That same phrase is inserted before the 45 feet in B. We have that?
got it.
as to the portion of the building above excavated area.
Okay. You got it?
I'm gonna go pick it up from the recording, but if you stated everything that's in it, we're good.
Good, all right. We have a motion, we do have a motion.
We have a motion and a second.
Second,
Okay,
yes.
second, okay. Any additional discussion?
We're also approving the last sentence, any exposed foundation resulting from this increase may not exceed 18 inches.
Thank you. Yes,
I-
we
I
did
am-
not talk about that, and I'm glad you brought it up. Yes, that was also decided the other day. The exposed foundation on the sides of the building could not, because of this, because of excavation, cannot exceed 18 inches. That was at the insistence of our architects.
The reason is because we're measuring from finished floor. So we didn't want finished floor to be at that height, 5 feet down, and then have 6 feet of foundation, so you got even more stuff. We're putting a restriction on it, so we're not measuring, we're not telling them to measure from some grade point that could be hard to identify. We wanted something easy and consistent. Finished floor, and then control the foundation exposure.
I'm fine with that. Okay.
Okay? Thanks, Jay.
Okay, so that would just be a clarification to the motion, that the motion does include that last sentence about parallel plane may not be breached, any exposed foundation resulting from the increase may not exceed 18 inches. That's merely a clarification on the motion, which was to approve with the AB change, the whole block of text.
Yes, that's right.
All right,
That's right. Okay? We have a motion and a second.
and the
We have
clarification,
clarification, which really doesn't change any of the wording here, and, all right, all in favor?
aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We're good to go.
That was clear as mud, right?
If you understand it,
Okay. Mr.
architect
Knowles
can
and,
understand it.
Mr. Knowles and Holes, okay, all right. Where we are, as you so rightly pointed out, there's an underlined portion in this green text. This green text, by the way, is what was presented to City Council and the P&Z back in April,
Okay,
okay?
and got a informal nod of approval.
Got an informal nod of approval from P&Z. Well, it got a formal nod of approval from P&Z. City Council gave us some additional guidance that we're still working through, okay? So, I asked the question of the rest of my subcommittee members as to whether or not this 25-foot depression language still was good. And it was suggested to me that we decided that we didn't do that. Well, that's not true as far as I can recall, but new language was floated. And it is what the blue, or that is this text that is below proposed. So the underlined language could be substituted by the proposed language that is down below. And these are my learned colleagues' words that I got in a text on Sunday morning. So, that existing grade may be adjusted graphically as a straight line across unusual or minor topographic variations, including pools, ponds, existing basements, rock outcroppings, depressions, and natural drainage ways, with the intent to approximate original grade without penalty for previous construction. So we don't use 25 feet.
We're gonna call it the Knowles and Holes.
Yeah, that's right. This is the Knowles and Holes clause. So,
So the existing grade, it's bumpy most areas, but then if there's a depression, it's a straight line, right?
Yeah, and that could be a previous swimming pool, a previous basement, a previous dugout garage, or something of the sort.
yeah,
It could also just simply be
A hole.
a cave, a hole in the ground. I mean, we've got that situation over on, is it on Vale, where we have
yeah.
that lot with a,
The
with
caves
a,
in it,
with
yeah.
a hole, with a
Yeah.
cave that we used to,
Right.
we used to have
Halloween.
parties in there.
We used to do
Halloween.
tours
It's
on
on
Halloween.
Halloween.
Yeah. So, and there's caves everywhere in Rosewood, I'll just tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We found them when we put the sewer lines in, They were all over.
Is that where some of the bodies, I mean, where some of the people that we no longer have around are?
I don't know anything about that.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Yes.
I would make a motion that we substitute the proposed language in blue for the language that's underlined above. And do we have to spell out the exact language?
What,
No, it's all right. We've got it in writing.
what's gonna happen is, this is language that was used to describe. This is not the code language or anything. But in future descriptions of what it is we're trying to say, we're probably gonna use a lot of the same language. And probably the big question was whether the 25-foot that we had discussed, does that really play here? And the answer is no, we don't think so. We're getting rid of that.
I'm gonna second Jay's motion.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Do we have additional discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Folks, we have finished building heights. We have everything in here. I'm gonna take this and turn it into something a little more readable, but
Cohesive,
it's gonna be
yes.
these words. That is a different thing,
Okay.
okay? Now, I'm gonna open up let's see, where is that? That is foundation height, right? Side setback,
I think you're on 6. So.
okay.
Oh, no, 5.
Okay. Well, I guess, why don't we keep this one open, because it was originally written in the side setback projections, and I'm gonna hand this off to Duke because you wanted to do this anyway, right?
I did.
I think you voted I think you volunteered for this. There is on the,
Are we going now to the proposed side setback projections language?
Yes.
we're going to side setback projections.
Is that on the agenda?
I don't even see it.
I don't
Well,
see
it was always in what
Part
we
of
were
this height
discussing.
conversation.
Yeah, Alex insisted that it was really part of building height.
It's this, is that,
Yes.
that is part of the package.
Yeah, it's-
Yeah.
yeah, we have language here. We
So
have-
you're saying it falls under number 4?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, we're not off of 4 yet.
All right.
Okay, so,
Okay, well, he's handing this all to me, and I'm just telling you that, hey, we're gonna keep, all projections of building features typically used may overhang into any required yard, a maximum of 2 feet.
Yeah, now tell me, explain that the wind starting 12.5 feet back from any side setback is the question I don't understand.
So that means that it can't,
Nothing is gonna be. more
nothing's
than-
gonna ever be closer than 12.5 feet to a side property line. So obviously, on a 10-foot side setback, you can't project a bay window, let's say, or a cantilevered section into that setback. But on the 15-foot side, you could.
You can go a maximum of 2.5 feet, right?
what,
So,
it's a maximum, what
2 feet,
I
yeah.
think what's trying to happen here is, a year ago, an ordinance was passed that said that you could put projections out on a side wall, even in a 10-foot setback of up to 2 feet. Okay? There's concern that that was a little bit too much.
Push.
So, essentially, the 2 feet doesn't change, but the 10 feet does. So instead of starting at a 10-foot setback, this would require that you have to be at least 12.5 feet back.
So I just wanna make sure on a 10-foot setback, which is very typical on most houses, you cannot have any projections. projections.
That is correct,
Okay.
Now, would that,
Except a roof overhang.
except the roof overhang.
Okay.
That's it.
how about, air conditioning compressors?
We don't talk about those. And and since they're not defined, it's okay.
So you could have those.
You can
Well,
have those.
Is that an ordinary
That is
projection?
not
The
a building
building feature
projection.
would be an air conditioning?
My preference would always be to have nothing closer than 10 feet, including overhang, air conditioning compressors, and everything.
Okay.
That's a little different. But that's,
Yeah,
So,
well, I would, again,
All right.
I'm gonna argue about the overhangs, cause, you know, that's a tool in anyone's toolbox to make a house more energy efficient
Yeah.
and do all the right things from a climatic standpoint, and it makes a huge difference. So, let me just tell you, for everybody that puts up all those curtains and blinds and everything, getting in your house, no.
no,
When the heat hits the glass, it's in the house, so you try to shade things the best you can, and overhangs are a good way to do it.
so does this say that you could have an overhang that would go to your property line?
No, we have an ordinance on the books right now that says that you're allowed to go 30% across.
30%, okay.
30%.
What does it say now, 30
It's 30% of the setback.
on the setback?
So you
Yeah.
got
So
three.
You could
roof
have a 3-foot
overhangs.
overhang.
Yeah, so you could have a 3.
Do we need to carve roof overhangs then out of this side setback projections language?
No, since overhangs are already handled, we have the ordinance specific as to what the overhangs are allowed to be. We don't need to touch it.
well, how about the compressors?
We never talked about it.
Well,
We just
no.
never did. Okay? So,
If
If
it's
you
a
wanna
separate
introduce
if
that
it's a separate
discussion, I
piece
think
of
it's
equipment,
fine.
it is not a projection of the building. It's only if it's a window unit that it's a projection of the building, Tom, would be my
I
interpretation.
know, I'm bringing it up, but I'm wondering if that's what, can I put a compressor on the property line?
as far as I know, yeah, adjacent to the property line, as far as I know, it'd be legal, yeah.
Well, why?
Yeah.
It's a building and it's a
Yeah.
structure and it's within
It
the
has-
setback.
Yeah, it has never been.
should not be in the property.
It has never been
Yeah, it's a good-
specified that you can't do it.
Well, I'm confused. Jay, you think it does?
I think a freestanding AC compressor is a violation of setback line.
No, it's not,
That's not.
it's not.
From an architectural
I
standpoint?
got one.
Is yours?
Mine's in the 10-foot.
Yeah.
It's a piece of equipment, it's not
Yeah.
But, I
part
mean,
of the building.
it's shielded, protected, I mean, nobody can see it, I mean, and there's good ventilation around it, so you'd be happy.
Yeah. It's effectively, yeah, the fence is on the property line, you're right. It's just another, it's a separate item that so far has been permitted. If you wanted to include that as something that we are making a recommendation of, we can have that discussion. But we haven't brought it up so far. That's never, and nor, going back to the survey, nor has anybody in the survey, and I can say this with confidence, it has never been, there's not a word about that in the survey. Not a,
Have
no
we had
comment,
any complaints?
no comment.
Not that I've heard of.
I mean, look, the biggest thing with AC compressors is, I mean, I've seen a ton of architects, they don't think about where to put them.
Until-
Jerry can, you know, attest to this, they put them right behind the bed wall to the, you know, the primary bedroom. And the owner goes, who thought of putting that condenser out there?
Yeah, who put that noisy thing right outside my window?
That's right.
And I mean, you know, we try to think very specifically about where they go. You want not too much free online run, and you want it where that noise is not gonna bother somebody, you know?
For me, I'm fine with leaving things the way they are, that we never talked about it. I don't see anybody asking about it. I just as soon just let it hang.
It's a sleeping dog we won't kick.
It's
I'm-
exactly
I'm
that.
good with
All
that.
right, my question though is the last 5 or 6 words, when starting 12.5 feet from any side setback.
Yeah.
That to me is not clear. I think it should say, provided that no such projection shall result in a building setback of less than 12.5 feet.
Thank you.
That's what it says, Brian.
That ain't what it says.
Okay. Is that what you believe then? Is it good? Is that what you want?
Yeah,
All right, all right,
You have to
Well,
say.
okay,
Motion from the floor,
okay.
Yeah.
or just a suggestion. It seems to me that it would be more clearly stated if you begin the sentence with, for any side setback of 12.5 feet or greater, comma,
Yes,
you can extend, and use, instead of overhang, use extend, so that you aren't confused about whether that means an E.
okay, so,
read that over again.
At the beginning, you
Yep.
would say, where for any setback of 12.5 feet or greater.
Any side setback.
That true.
that's right, yeah.
May side setback, yes. And then you're using both setback and required yard. They're the same thing, which you ought to pick one of the yard.
Well,
For
whenever
residential
you-
code, it uses the term yard.
But when you get past 12.5 feet,
You want to use a consistent term.
you know, you know, what we're talking about is a 2-foot overhang here, a 2-foot projection. And if you were back 18 feet on the side, who cares if you have a 6-foot projection on your thing? If you want to cantilever out 6 feet and you're not coming into the setback, who cares?
Okay, then you would say
Yeah.
where the side setback is at least 12.5 feet.
What side setback is after consideration of the extension?
No, because you're talking about an extension into the setback.
Yeah. But
So that
what
would
we're
be-
trying to do though is to say that however long that extension is and however big the setback is, you're never gonna get closer than 10 feet.
Well,
12.5.
really, what this says
12.5
is,
feet.
you know, since we're allowed to have a 10-foot setback and we have a 15-foot setback, that nothing is allowed to project into the setback. That's what it says. Nothing can
Then I
project into the
misunderstand
setback.
this language.
No, because you can have a 12.5 on one side, 12.5 on the other if you want.
Is that really true though?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, I know that we have to have 25 feet altogether, but,
I know
But if
for
you
a fact.
chose,
okay.
if you chose to set back 15 feet on both sides,
Okay,
then you could go 2.5 feet additional each.
you could go, so it would be up to 4.5 feet, right, if you wanted.
well, the
Because
setback
you're
is,
going down to
12.5
12.
on each side.
Yeah, that's, see,
is the setback we're talking about a zoning setback or is it a platted setback or is it all of the above?
It's a zoning setback, it's not a platted setback.
yeah. See, there's.
Well, it then
say
seems
what
like
you-
that,
What you're allowed to do now is project 2 feet into a 10-foot setback. And this says, we want to
Actually-
change that.
Yes.
We want to change that.
I'd just like to echo quickly a point that Councilmember Brown brought up, is that we don't have setbacks in our residential zoning code. We only have required yards. So I would recommend anything here saying a side setback be revised. You say any required yard in other places, but we don't actually, the term setback is not used in our residential zoning code. So I would,
that's probably a good idea because setback is somewhat of an ambiguous term. And what is the meaning of a setback is somewhat ambiguous, like the air conditioning compressor.
I actually
Like
think
110
it
too.
might, because sometimes we have the concern is when we have required yard and also the term yard used to, you know, talk about direction, like the front yard isn't necessarily the required yard. So I do actually think at some point in the future it might be something we want to do where we look at changing that to the term setback, but for the time being, it's only required yards.
Well, can we say side yard setback?
The term, I'm just gonna say the term setback is not,
Side yard.
Yeah,
right, it
we're-
would just be side yard.
Yeah, this is
in
new
this term.
language
Mhm.
Oh.
that's actually come into play even since the CRCRC's been created. It's fairly new.
Mhm.
Why don't we establish exactly what it is we're trying to achieve? If in fact a 10-foot required side yard, which now allows you to have a 2-foot projection into it. If that's not correct, what is it that we are going to allow? What are we recommending instead of?
Well, I'm confused. You're not gonna allow, we're not allowing anybody to intrude into the 10-foot side yard.
We,
Period.
that's on the books right now, you can't.
Right.
You can do that. And what I'm asking is, what are we wanting
No.
to change that to?
No, I'm trying to say that the way this reads is, that no one can intrude into that 10-foot side yard.
That's it.
Okay.
I would be, if
And that's
that
better
says,
than-
if that says it all, then I'm okay with it.
I mean, that's pretty simple, and I think that's what all this says.
Well, what is starting 12.5 feet from any side setback? Or what is that, what does that mean? Where do you start?
Well, I think the notion is that going inside of a 10-foot side yard was too much. So, but if you ratchet back a couple, 2.5 feet, you're gonna be all right. You're gonna at least have a whole 10-foot side yard that guarantees you have 10 feet of side yard.
Yeah, that's,
Well, either Brooks' language, I think, is fine, which I took down to be in a side yard of 12.5 feet or greater, all other ordinary projections of the building may overhang into the required yard a maximum of 2 feet. Strike the wind starting 12.5 feet from the side setback.
yeah.
I get that. I understand what that means, and I think that carries out our intent. Alternatively, I had said, don't do Brooks' introduction at the end, say, provided that no such projection shall result in a building setback, which would be a side yard of less than 10 feet. Brooks is actually more, I think, more appropriate. Your change is better than mine.
I like what you just, that last thing, you said, no projection rule.
Well, that's just belt and suspenders, quite frankly, because I think you covered it with the first start off, but
I agree with that.
Can I ask a question? It
Yeah.
says amend setback rules, section 107-76. Are we not amending the setback rules, section 107-76?
Actually, are we amending side yard rules?
Let me pull up, 10776.
Yeah.
I think the answer is yes, Jay.
That we are amending the setback rules.
10776 is minimum required depth and width of yards. That
Yeah.
is the title of that section.
Okay,
So it's yards.
does it have the projections in there? Is that projection language in there?
It,
That's gonna be in that, it's gonna be one of the newer ordinance.
the newer one.
It may not be codified in here yet.
Well, that one should be.
well, from our standpoint,
30%.
I don't think it makes any difference, because it's gonna go to P and Z, council,
And then the
our-
lawyers
up
to be
the
right.
lawyers, and they're gonna
Yeah, we
write
just
it.
have to be clear what our
It's there.
intent is.
Yeah, I don't know what, I'm with you.
I don't think we need to,
I'm with you. I wanna be clear on what our intent
All
is.
right.
What is it? Exactly. And
All right.
if in fact the intent is that no side yard can be less than 10 feet, or,
I have, let me make a motion on that. I would accept, Brooks', wording with the addition of no projections within the 10 feet of the side
okay.
yard. And just put belts and suspenders on it, so our intent is very clear.
Okay,
on-
when this ordinance, the way that it's written, was written, when it was discussed by P and Z, there was a lot of discussion about it being habitable projections, okay? That chimneys were allowed. Chimneys aren't habitable, and that you could build a chimney into the setback, okay?
I don't want anything in the setback, and we don't have setbacks in
Okay.
the side yard.
All right, all right. Is that what everybody wants?
Well, I made that motion.
You
so-
made the, okay, make the motion again, please, I don't understand.
Do you make that one more second?
Yeah.
No, but I'll try. I would make the motion that we accept Brooks's language as to how we start that. And Brooke, you may have to give that again if you don't mind. But we add a provision at the end that says, in no event shall any, construction be within the 10-foot yard,
Up 10 foot of the property line.
side yard.
And we're still maintaining overhangs.
Yeah.
And I don't wanna give that up. I agree 100% with Duke on that. That we want to, promote.
Well, that language is still there, may overhang in it, required yard maximum
No,
of 2 feet.
well, we don't talk about overhangs in this language here, and I just
But-
wanna make sure that overhangs are
Maybe we say
subtracted
it,
from
to
this.
strike overhang and put project.
Well,
All other ordinary projections of building features, I'm hoping that other ordinary projections somehow refers back to the roof projection and excludes that from other. But assuming that, it would then read, in a side yard of 12.5 feet or greater, all other ordinary projections of building features typically used in residential building construction may project into any required yard a maximum of 2 feet, period. Now, Tom wants to edit that. My suggestion, or something like it, would say, provided that no such projection shall result in any side yard of less than 10 feet.
Yeah, I like that.
No,
Is that a motion or a second?
No, that was neither. It was a clarification, or it was a proposal to run out and how to get the language of what the motion needs to be.
That was a throw it out there.
Sir?
I like that.
That was a throw it out there, right?
That was a throw it out there, and
I'll
let's see if
second
it.
your motion.
Okay, but, so no projection may. You must have this written down, right? You didn't just rattle that off.
Well, I wrote it down and then I erased it because Tom
Well,
didn't,
don't
because
erase
I
it, put it
didn't.
back on there.
Okay, provided that
Me.
no such projection shall result in a side yard of less than 10 feet.
Well, it would result in a projection into a side yard of less than.
I agree with that.
Okay, can we turn this into language? Cause I mean, I know what's trying to happen here, and but I swear that if I write it, it'll be wrong.
Well,
What
I
did you say?
thought that we just, that Brian just wrote that.
Not
Okay.
resulting.
And I,
Actually copied it down
Did you?
verbatim.
okay, so are we,
Side yards.
Well, it sounds like there's still discussion on the whether then shall result in a side yard of less than 10 feet is
Brian's
adequate
working on
language,
it.
right?
Shall project into a side yard of less than 10 feet.
Right.
Okay.
so are you writing
No
it,
such
Brian?
projection shall project in a side yard.
Shall extend into a side yard of less than 10 feet.
Brian didn't know he's gonna have to work, so.
See, I think this, as long as we give the intent here, it'll get done when we go to the,
I'm going to make the following motion.
We have to know ourselves what we're saying.
He's got it written
Right.
down. He's
Yeah.
got it all
Well,
written.
no, I'm actually gonna finesse that.
Okay,
What I'm gonna propose, so I'm gonna throw out, or throw up, cause throwing up, whatever is the proper verb here. With respect to the text in our package called side setback projections, we have the following, we make it read as follows. Amend setback rules, section 107-76. Actually, it's not setback rules, it's side yard rules, isn't that correct? Amend
Say it in 1776.
side yard
yeah,
rules in section 107-76 as follows, adding Brooks language, in a side yard of 12.5 feet or greater, other ordinary projections of building features typically used in residential construction may project into any required yard a maximum of 2 feet. Period.
no, that doesn't work.
Hmm?
Because that doesn't work, because if you have a yard that is 16, 20 feet wide, you're still restricting, your language still restricts you to only 2 feet of a projection. Well, why would you do that? I mean, you still have 8 feet left. It's, What we're trying to do is to keep it from happening within a 10-foot yard. Trying to keep projections outside of a 10-foot yard.
Let me read it to you again,
Okay,
and let me read it to me again,
all right.
because I disagree. All right. Amend side yard rule, section 107-76 as follows. In bold, in a side yard of 12.5 feet or greater, which would include 18 feet,
Yes.
other ordinary projections of building features typically used in residential construction may project into a required yard a maximum of 2 feet. So your 18-foot side yard could have a projection of 2 feet from the house, and you'd have 16 feet.
But
Are
you
you
could-
saying you want more than that in the
Yeah, no,
18-foot
I
side
just want to
yard?
be sure, okay, whenever we say,
Okay.
That's what I
whenever
thought.
and I'm a little bit, I think messed up with the yard language, because when we say yard, we are defining yard to be 10 or 15 feet or 12 and a half feet if the case is such that it's both sides. But not that portion that is beyond that, even if you don't build on it.
It's not yard.
That's not
Because
yard.
the term required yard is the defined minimum space.
And I think required is that that's off, is that in your text?
Um,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
don't,
Because it
I-
started in,
it's already in there, into any required yard, a maximum of 2 feet.
Okay, all right. And if we have that, I'm good with it, you're right.
you don't wanna
That's
put
it.
the,
That's it.
10-foot, nothing.
Yeah, you had one
Well-
more sentence.
My finesse is going to be to say, the recommendation of this committee is that the author of the legal term take into consideration our intent that this means nothing closer than 10 feet to
All
a
right,
property
I'm
line.
good with that.
That's kind of, yeah, that's the asterisk underneath.
That's
all
fine.
this, Right,
As
yeah.
long as we can give our intent as we pass this along,
we-
I'm perfectly
yeah.
happy with that.
Do you know, or did you
We're not
record
gonna
that then,
recognize it,
Ashley?
we get it back
Okay, if
anyway.
we have that recorded that way,
Say,
And he
then
made the motion.
was that the motion? Are we in a motion or are we?
He has to withdraw his first.
Do you
I'll
need to-
withdraw my motion,
Okay.
and I'll second,
And
Brian's motion.
I'll make the motion
Yes,
I thought you.
go ahead.
that this text that we're dealing with,
Mhm.
say, amend side yard rules, section 107-76 as follows.
Mhm.
In bold, I suppose, whatever that's supposed to mean is fine with me. In a side yard of 12.5 feet or greater, other ordinary projections of building features typically used in residential building construction may project into any required yard a maximum of 2 feet. Asterisk. The drafter of the actual code language is requested to honor the intention of the committee that this means no projection will be closer than 10 feet to the adjacent property line.
I second that
Okay,
motion.
and I only want a friendly amendment in there that all of the language described does not include roof overhangs,
I will accept that.
okay? Right? Other than that, any additional discussion? Or do we have a second on Ryan's motion?
We did.
I already did.
Okay, got a second, all right. Additional discussion? Good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes carried. Let's move on to agenda item number 5, discussion and possible action on foundation height. Same document. It's the final item on that document. It says finite, and we have discussed this before. We never brought it to closure. And it is foundation exposure within the public view from the right-of-way cannot exceed 6 feet. And foundation exposure within public view must be screened such that the viewable portion does not exceed 2.5 feet. Now, I brought this to the city council meeting last time, erroneously, frankly, because we did not ever approve this. I'm happy with this language, I love it, I think it's just fine, 6 feet and 30 inches, I'm fine with that. We got into a lot of discussion as to what kind of screening was gonna be required, is it allowed to be vegetative? Does it have to be some sort of a concrete barrier, whatever it is? And we really just kind of dropped the discussion there and never really solved it. So, from my perspective, I don't know if we need to get into that. I think we can be appropriately vague and say you just can't see it.
Jerry has given us some more precise language, which I kind of like, but I don't know that I'm objecting to what you're talking about, Dave.
Okay?
Jerry, where is that stuff?
What Jerry had done was he borrowed from the drainage control manual. Yeah. Yeah.
Jerry Fleming, 305 Nixon Drive. I just didn't like the word screen because if you look at my vegetation now, there's not much screen.
Okay.
And
You're
so
guilty, huh?
I try.
I
And
have
so-
something
and-
like vegetation
yeah.
on my property too.
So what I did was saw that drainage criteria manual where they address exposed concrete and took out, foundation wall, or I modified it for foundation, and then I suggested make it look like the adjacent building material finish, and go on down to like 6 inches within the grade. And so you eliminate having exposed concrete from the finished floor down to the grade. That was,
Is down to grade a little bit too restrictive, Jerry? It seems to me that, allowing a foot or 18 inches or something of exposed concrete is not so unsightly and would make it a lot easier to comply with this thing rather than taking it all the way
well,
to ground.
well, I've been sensitized by the architects over the years on exposing things.
I think
So
a
it-
maximum of 18 inches. Because, essentially you try to, if it's masonry, you try to stair step your brick lug to mimic
Yeah.
natural grade or finished grade. Or if it's siding, the same thing,
All right. What do we do for language then?
Yeah, what have we, given what we have here? Go ahead, Jerry.
Well, if stucco instead of whatever the finished material is, I think that's fairly easy to do if done on my house, rather than just exposed concrete. That,
Do we have, and I did not copy some proposed language?
It's on the last page of the same document that we've been discussing. It's under foundations.
Right
It's
under
the last,
right under,
right under the side setback
there it is.
projections. It's right there. Okay. There should have been more space in there between those things. I apologize.
So is there a way to incorporate your suggestion, Jerry, into what's
Of course there is.
on the document?
Did
'Cause
you?
we don't
yeah,
talk about
Yeah, I don't know whether
materials.
before you had sent your suggestion, did you see what was written here?
my green doesn't print,
Yeah, okay.
so all I saw was screen. Was the point that I was trying to get into.
Yeah, okay, the foundation exposure within public view must be screened, such a viewable portion does not exceed 2.5 feet.
Right, and I
That's what
just-
we have here, and you must have looked at that.
I
and you didn't
saw,
like it.
you're right, I saw it, and I saw the word screen, and I still saw, in my mind, visualized exposed concrete foundation being exposed
Uh-huh,
on houses. And a lot of houses, about probably half of them around here, have a finished material that goes down right across the street, a nice one. So there's ways to do it nice and some to just leave it bare. But I'm not an expert at it. I was just into the aesthetics of it,
yeah.
but I defer to the architects.
But, Dick, are you talking about changing this, the 30 inches to 18? Is that what I heard?
Yeah, okay, this is where we left it whenever we discussed it last, but we did not bring closure to it. Okay, and that's been months ago.
Yeah, I don't know, Tom.
Do,
I need to think about it.
30 inches.
are we ready, maybe we're not ready to
Hang
do
on.
anything.
I'm writing.
You're writing, okay.
And I have a question about exposure within public view from the right-of-way on the first one. The second sentence, it just says within public view. Can you, if you can see their side foundations from the street, which you can in many houses, is that included under this provision, that can't be, cannot exceed 6 feet?
I think that was the intent,
Okay.
but, I mean, I wasn't the author of this, so I can't remember how.
Yeah.
Do we need to maybe say foundation exposure within public view from the right-of-way must be screened? In the second sentence, use the same
Well,
language?
In the second sentence,
Yeah.
foundation within the public view must be screened.
Public view from the right-of-way.
I'll tell you, 6 feet is
Okay. From the right,
substantial.
okay.
Just parroting the
Yeah,
language
so
in the
it's
first sentence.
essentially the same language,
Right.
yeah, right, yeah, okay. Must be screened against such that the viewable portion, is that what you want?
Mhm.
You just want to insert that piece?
Just want to insert from the right-of-way like we did in the first part.
That seems reasonable to me.
Dave, did we talk
Let me
about that 6
try
feet?
something.
Yes,
All concrete foundations
Yes.
which would be visible from adjacent roadway right-of-way or neighboring properties, taking something from Jerry's, shall be covered to match the upper wall finish material to no less than 18 inch from natural grade.
I'm just afraid that we're delving into aesthetics now and design. I mean,
Well,
we've
no
always
doubt
said
we
we
are.
weren't gonna
No
try
doubt we
to
are, Jay.
legislate aesthetics.
well, whenever we had what brought this up, of course, is the house on Pleasant next to here. That's what started it. The gentleman who lives across the street from that house has addressed this group twice, been here twice to talk about it.
From the house, the old pickle lot house.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And said, can't you do something about this? And that house came up in our survey, not anybody was asking about it, but it actually is mentioned several times by people in their
In the workshop
comments,
hall.
in their comments, okay? Okay, so, and there are probably other instances that are problematic, but maybe not quite as egregious as what we're seeing down the street here. When we talked about this, it seemed like, given that that was the starting point, 6 feet almost seemed like it was a gimme, it was a great thing. Now, certainly we can change that, but what's trying to happen here, I think, is we're trying to ensure that we don't have a whole bunch of exposed foundation, whatever that is. And we had talked about that even if you do have this large exposed foundation, you still have to put something in front of it.
Well, alternatively, Jerry's suggestion is actually that you just drop the finished wall material down over it.
But again, that's an aesthetic,
Or we have talked.
architectural decision. I have 2 feet of exposed foundation on my side yards, and it looks fantastic, I don't think I should have to bring the stucco down to the ground.
No, I would never say bring it down to grade, but, 18 inches to me is probably a reasonable number.
And I'm not rejecting, by the way, the concept of putting some growies in front of it, shrubbery and whatnot. Then you get into the question of what is the ambiguity of what is acceptable shrubbery, et cetera. There's somebody wants oleanders and somebody wants cannabis, but
Yeah, look, I mean,
I prefer the cannabis myself.
You know, a lot of people are either
It is
bringing the
beautiful.
finished material down, they're putting planters in front of that to stair step or soften the grade change, or they're landscaping in addition, you know.
Uh,
There's a lot of tools in the toolbox.
I think we're talking conceptually here, are we not, folks?
Yeah.
Well, I think-
Conceptually, I find that the landscaping or the flower box concept is fine, either one is fine. Bringing the other wall material down to within a couple of feet of the ground area is fine. What we're trying to do is attack the 12 feet or whatever we've got of
Right.
exposed
Well-
concrete down the way.
Let's look at the root cause of that. That was done to get up height, to get a view. Now, our height ordinance would address that.
And look, there's a house on Rollingwood Drive, fairly close to the one at Riley and Rollingwood on the north side that, you know, they wanted to have a fairly level driveway and put the garage, it's John Lindell's old house, okay, for reference.
Yeah. Nice house.
Yeah, but, you know, they put the garage on the high side, built straight out to keep a, you know, flat ground floor, and it's probably 10 feet out of grade on the right-hand side.
Where is this now?
John Lindell's old house.
So basically, where
Riley and,
Timberline
Roll.
comes into Rollingwood Drive on the east end,
yeah.
when you come Timberline to Rollingwood Drive, you're pretty much right in front of that house.
On these buildings.
White stucco. But I'm just saying, you know, there was some design decisions to, you know, make the garage accessible, not have a steep driveway, have it all one level. And then on the far right side, you got a big drop off.
Would the height ordinance as we are
This-
projecting it, as we are suggesting it,
Well, the height ordinance
would that mean that that house?
keeps you to 35
It wouldn't
feet.
have
That's all it
affected that.
does.
It wouldn't
But
have
that would
affected
include exposed foundation. That
Mhm.
35 feet would include. It doesn't really do anything for this big, massive piece of material and then some windows up in here.
Now,
I
they
think
brought
it's-
stucco all the way down, so it's all consistent, you know. I don't think there's an issue with that house
It's a very attractive house, I think.
from that
It,
standpoint.
it is stuccoed all the way down?
I think it is, yeah.
It wouldn't be offensive. Jay, I kind of agree with you. You know, all my taste is in my mouth, according to my wife, and that's okay. So I'm
What does
not,
that mean?
I'm not going to be trying to pick, materials to do this with. I don't think that's.
Well, we can't. As a matter of state law, we cannot, the city cannot
Do
tell
that.
somebody
That's right.
what exterior materials to use. But we can say, once you've picked a material to use, bring it down to
Yeah.
something near grade. I think we could do that if that's what we chose to do as an alternative, or cover it with a,
Vegetation.
landscape, or cover it with a planter.
Well, this statement as stated covers all that. I think it's foundation exposure within public view from the right of way cannot exceed 6 feet. So let's say you've got 6 feet of concrete, you know, raw concrete. But then you have to screen that up to 2.5. Only 2.5 feet of that concrete can stick above. So
We're there.
we're there.
You have to put something in the way or change the sheathing or whatever it is you do, but it's,
And Jay, I hear what you're saying about, you know, dictating design, but I don't personally feel that way. That it's gonna, you know, if we massage this and make it fairly restricted, that we're dictating design or aesthetics.
what Jay had suggested a few minutes ago was is that we take some of this view from the right of way and move that also down here to the second line.
Mhm.
so that it's clearer that we're viewing this thing from the right of
Well, I think.
way. And that you would be good with that language.
I think that's enough, but I hear that other people want to extend the finish.
As one
down-
alternative, Jay.
Down to a reasonable amount, like 2 feet above.
Well, we also talked, I heard earlier, adjacent, not only from the right of way, but from adjacent properties. And didn't I hear
is
that
correct.
earlier?
The side yards,
That
that's
was
right.
in,
That is
that
right.
was in, the language that Jerry had proposed to deal with the concept of dropping the finished exterior down to near grade level. I just adopted that same language without critical thought. So if that bothers people, then fine, get rid of that.
Doesn't bother me.
No, I was wondering if we should put that in there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not opposed to it.
Not at
I
all.
wasn't,
You know, so that would mean, however, that on this house down here that we're using as an example of a bad result, well, actually, it's on a corner, so two facets of that big foundation
Yeah.
would have to be either screened or brought into conformity with the above materials. But then the other two sides,
or,
question mark,
or adjacent property.
are we concerned about that?
Adjacent property owners all 4 sides.
Yeah.
Well, on
You
the,
can say it, or suggestion, you can say it the other way in the negative, say exposed concrete may not exceed.
Yeah, just.
So you're not dictating material, you're just saying it can't be exposed concrete.
Good
Or you
point.
can use a generic term like finished building material, or something like that.
But given that there are some houses, modern houses, that actually use concrete as part of their
exterior
exterior,
finish.
you know,
Uh-huh.
doing board concrete is actually a popular thing right now, you know? And so if we say
That
it's
wouldn't
kind of a,
fall in the category of exposed foundation though, to me.
Jerry had a thought apparently. Did you?
I didn't mean to take up so much, just,
no,
Okay.
no,
Uh,
No,
on-
this is
on
an
that-
issue that we have tried.
this is how the sausage is made.
all right.
We've
Okay.
approached this 2 or 3 times, and you've just given us a set of concepts to be
Okay,
talking about, Jerry, so you're
The-
not,
It's my understanding
It's
that
not making a
301
problem.
Pleasant is gonna have 2 planters, you know, one terraces out from the other. How far up they go, I don't know. And I just, you know, appreciate y'all taking the time to think about it, 'cause I didn't have a real lot of expertise on how much it's involved. And the houses that they're building nowadays, would they even consider exposing the foundation? As much as they're putting into them and spending it. So is it something that we need to,
I see an awful lot of big trucks full of rocks moving up the road. I mean,
Okay.
there's stuff getting filled in,
well,
so.
It-
this
we
sounds
may
like-
hash
looks
it
like
out.
exposed foundation to me.
If your exposed foundation is limited to 6 feet,
Yeah.
and you have to cover up to 2.5 feet of it with something, what's the big deal about 2 feet of concrete? And they're using, if it's in the style of house, it's not just flat, they use the planks, whatever you call that.
to me, there's a disjoint, discontinuity between the building material and then going to the exposed concrete. And then it just says, oh, I don't wanna spend any money to dress up this part. So they just cut it short. And it gets into your sense of aesthetics, I grant you. But that was mine, that we're sitting here talking about foundations. I thought, well, this is a little area that we could probably clean up and make a little bit nicer, in my opinion. But it's okay. Whatever you guys like to
It's
talk
really kind
about.
of a matter of degree. You know, if there's exposure, if 2.5 feet is an acceptable amount exposure,
Yeah.
and I think it is, it's fine. That's one thing, but if it's 10 feet of exposure, it's a whole different thing.
But they're not gonna be allowed to have that.
And what we're saying is, well, you can't do that. You can't have 10 feet of exposed foundation.
Hey,
So,
listen, off the record, I just want you to know, Jerry's comment about, you know, he was sorry for making it, he was insincere on that because he's an engineer. I've worked with him for 30 years. He always makes things more complicated.
And we still like and respect him.
that's right, that's right.
And by the way, the
That was
same
a-
rule could
that
apply
was
to
a-
lawyers.
That was a compliment.
I want the same rule to apply to lawyers. Equal protection for all
That's right.
professions.
Okay. Well, kids, what do we wanna do here? I mean,
Well, I'll
honestly,
accept,
I always thought that this language was just fine, and adding it. or
I'll add
changing-
I'll take out the first sentence. Okay, no, you're right, I won't do that, okay.
Yeah.
The first sentence of the proposed language, foundation exposure within public view from the right-of-way
Uh-huh,
cannot exceed 6 feet.
okay.
Foundation exposure within public view must be screened. Now, that doesn't say from the right-of-way.
That, and that's what
I'd like
Jay
to-
wanted to add that in.
But you also.
Must be screened such that the viewable portion does not exceed 2.5 feet, 30 inches, close paren.
But, somebody
We're
wanted
gonna have open
to
paren, you have
insert
to have closed paren.
from the neighbor, from this.
Well, the question is,
No, this does not address neighbors at all.
Do we care?
but if it's only
Do we care?
2.5 feet, I don't think it makes that big
Yeah.
a deal.
You know,
That's
my
amazing.
side, in my house, I can't see my side yard neighbors anyway, unless I go
If it was
outside.
6 feet,
Unless I actually go out.
Yeah, well, you're in a flat area of town, though, some of us are not. And some of us, for many years ago, we used to think there always was a brick ledge every time you poured a foundation, so you were gonna bring it down, and that was just the way things were done.
Right.
And the style now is different,
Well, mine has brick ledge, goes all the way down, does it? Yeah.
and mine is close to that.
Well, I'll tell you what,
All right, motion.
if the motion was this, and we pass it this way, you guys go home and think about it a little bit more, next time we have a meeting, if you have a problem, we'll bring it up again, but I'd just as soon get this passed the way it is.
well, I think we have a motion, right?
We did.
Well,
We
I
have a
read it,
second.
but I'll make it into a motion. I was
Yes.
just reading it.
All right.
I was throwing it out
Okay.
for comment, but I'll
Right.
make it into a motion. I move that with respect to foundations, our recommendation to planning and zoning and then to city council is that foundation exposure within public view from the right-of-way cannot exceed 6 feet, period. Foundation exposure within public view from right-of-way must be screened such that viewable portion does not exceed 2.5 feet, paren 30 inches, close paren, period. So moved.
I second that motion. All right, we have a motion, we have a second, any additional discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Cool. I'll tell
Ashley, have
you
we
what,
given you enough to work with?
I am
Going
good.
back and looking at the,
Yeah, she's got the text. All we did was move a little bit additional text in there. It's
Did
good.
we, are you gonna go to item 6 next? Cause Jerry showed up.
Would you
so-
like to?
Yeah, and Jerry's been here
That's
more
right.
than once to try
That's
to
right.
get that.
He doesn't have anything better to do.
Okay. All right, now, okay, we're off of item 5, we're gonna move to regular agenda item number 6. Discussion and possible action on critical root zone protection.
do we have any
No.
material in the package that I didn't see?
No, we do not, but looking at the text that right now is trying to get codified, I did add a piece in there where I suggested we ought to consider putting something in there about a fence around and mulch on top of the critical
Okay.
root zone.
Let me
Didn't we
say where
address
this
that
is
in your
coming
work?
from, and maybe Jerry wants to talk about
That's
it.
right,
but
yes, that's fine.
It's his suggestion that we add something to the code that spells, we do say you have to protect the trees and the tree critical root zones, but we don't spell out what you have to do in order to do that. And I think Jerry has given us some language that spells that out in more detail.
Here he goes again.
Yeah, I just copied City of Austin requirements. as best I could. I didn't really get into the decking or whatever that involved.
Into the,
And the plywood over the mulch,
oh, okay.
okay? I was inspired by looking across the street where they just put pounds of dirt over their tree. So anyway, that's where I said, oh, we didn't have anything to address that. Yeah. One point that I read in the City of Austin requirements, they even have a manual, environmental criteria manual.
Oh my gosh.
That said, if you don't protect mulch around the trees, they are considered removed.
Mm.
So
No,
Say that again, Jerry.
if they go out and see that you are not protecting the tree critical root zones with mulch and the other requirements, they consider the tree removed. So potentially will die from the compaction and all the excavation that will go around
Okay,
it.
So that's the city, that's part of the city's enforcement device? The city of Austin's enforcement device, is that
Well,
what you're saying?
I've been, it's hearsay that I know that if they enforce it, I haven't seen it myself, I'm not in that
If it's a
area.
protected tree, they wouldn't want to consider it removed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you removed it, you'd have all sorts of draconian
I-
replacement issues.
Well, I think
That's what that backs you into.
Right.
Yeah.
It's an enforcement device is what it turns
And I just
into.
threw this
If
to
it was a
Jade so
heritage tree, you'd
he
have
could
a bigger
digest it.
problem.
Sure, and what, first I
But-
wanted to ask
Lose your
Ashley,
building permit.
what we're currently using right now is, we're just referring to the Austin code. There is no written in any part of our code spelling out how you do
Oh.
critical root zone protection or tree protection.
All I remember was the keeping it clear during construction.
Okay.
And on the building plan, you're supposed to have a storage area designated, and you're not supposed to get your piling of material out of the storage area.
That's in the building code.
That's the city of Rollingwood currently, that's what they say.
Isn't there some tree protection language in that as well?
No,
No?
I didn't see it.
When-
That's what
that's-
I
that's-
I
That's
marked-
an indication on the site plan, your building storage area.
Right, you're
what
supposed to
happened with-
designate the storage area, and it says, keep the roots clear of debris and
I
Other
thought that
things?
in our when we built our house, in the building code did say specific, you had to protect the unremoved tree.
ATS came to, whenever we did the site plan site inspection, the ATS guy said that we had to put a fence around our protected trees and mulch them.
Okay.
Now, if you talk with,
But that's not in the code,
if you, that's
Well,
right,
the-
if
the
you talk
code-
with Nikki, she'll tell you it's not in the code.
okay.
But that they do it as a matter of course. It's almost like an understood
right.
best practice, okay? And I think what wants to happen here is, well, let's do better than that, let's put it in the code. So,
So I would ask the committee's permission to take the language that you've given us and write out some proposed recommendations for critical root zone and tree protection and present it to the tree subcommittee first.
Okay, sounds good. Because this is a different section than the canopy management. This is in the construction,
Oh,
well, with it, but
Section.
still, within the ordinance that you're proposing or the changes, there is some discussion there about and but it's vague. It says they must be protected.
right. It just says you have to protect the trees and protect the critical root zone.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
So it seems to me if that's in the current code, we could have some addendum to that spelling
Why
out.
can't you just add to it, yeah.
Some
Exactly.
specifications to what protection means,
What
that's what
that
you
is,
guys
right. Now-
are talking about.
Now, Alex and I had some discussion about this the other day, so I just want you to hear what she was fine with using mulch and using a fence around trees. She was not fine about laying plywood down on top of the critical root zone. She says that just invites things to be added on top of there. that
Yeah, it prevents the rain from getting through to
gets
the
it-
ground.
It's just not a good idea, and
That is a perfect place to store stuff.
exactly, look at all that plywood over there, so,
No kidding.
and,
So let me
God.
write out.
and nor is she for that idea where you take wood 2x4s and strapped them around the perimeter, girth the tree with that. She didn't like that.
Oh, really? That's what everybody does.
I know. Well, we didn't. We didn't whenever we built. All we did was add a fence. So you couldn't get there. I mean, it would have been belt and suspenders, really.
Well, again, my proposal is to take the information you gave us and write up some specific recommendations, but I've got to present it to the tree subcommittee, then it's got to go to CRCRC, and then to planning and zoning.
Which is
So-
just fine. We
Yeah.
have another CRC meeting before P&Z.
Okay.
Okay?
So with all your spare time, you've
Right?
Yeah, no, you've done 85.6% of the work.
So, okay. So we're gonna table this. So,
All right.
I motion to table this particular item.
As chair, you could probably do it all on your own.
Okay. I guess, okay.
But if you
well,
want a
then we-
motion to table,
can I
I
do
move
that?
to
All
table
right.
item number
Then-
6.
Then that's what we're doing.
I
We're
second the
gonna,
motion.
we're
I
gonna
don't think so.
table, discussion on item number 6 until next CRC meeting, hopefully.
Correct.
We good? All right, moving along to item number 7.
Yeah, now that's gonna be a real easy one.
Fence height? All
From
right.
reading the comments.
I'm gonna tell you, discussion of
they're all
possible
over the
action
place.
on fence height recommendation. I'm gonna start this off. I've given this an awful lot of thought, and I don't wanna do it. I don't wanna do it.
You're
I
gonna
think-
run into a buzzsaw, whatever you do. What is
Yeah,
our current
yeah.
rule? Brooke, do you
We
know?
don't have a rule. There are no rules.
Well, there.
It's all
there
about the
are
front
two
yard.
rules.
There's a front yard rule, and that's it.
No, that's not true. If you go over 6 feet on a fence, you're required to have it engineered.
Engineer, that's,
Oh, but not your neighbor's approval.
No, you don't have to have your neighbor's approval, but you do have to have it engineered, so it doesn't fall on your neighbor.
I think
That
that,
is the intent of
I
that.
think that that's not in an ordinance. I think that that is in the permitting process. I don't believe that we have that actually, that 6-foot rule in the ordinances.
All I know is that if you go over 6 feet, you do have to have it engineered.
that's probably a building code thing,
Yeah.
which
Well,
we are required to follow.
The permitting piece, not the code.
No, I'm saying like international building
Oh.
code probably, because I know ATS is the one that enforces
Yeah.
that.
Well, 6
So-
feet in Rowanwood probably isn't gonna cut it in
Pertain.
half the situations.
Okay.
I mean, you know, there are an awful lot of 8-foot fences out there that look fine, they're perfectly
Hmm.
fine.
And they are required to submit,
As long as
engineering
they're
information. Hmm.
What, if you, want a 20-foot fence and you get it engineered, can you have it?
There's nothing that has a maximum height
And
requirement.
I would suggest we do have something that
I think
says,
9 foot is probably 8
yeah,
foot.
maybe 8-foot limit,
Here's,
unless,
okay,
you know, you have
here-
neighbors, immediate neighbors' approval.
here's my situation. We look out a side window, down below to, I guess it's Gentry, over here, and you can see, there's that house that's got like the Mercury sign on it. I don't know who that is, but there's
Now, who is
a
that?
guy, must be a car
Continental
buff. Yeah, guy must be a car buff of some sort. Anyway, he's got an RV back in his backyard.
Steve Workenheim.
Okay.
It's just say Steve, he's the
Continental Club.
Continental Club.
Okay. Anyway,
Good
he's
man.
got a good-sized RV back there. And he shields it from the next door, and he's also on the edge of a gully. So there's a dry bed stream that goes right past the other side of his fence. Well, the fence that he's got that is on his side of that stream bed is probably 15 feet tall to
But,
cover up his RV.
but also because of the topography drops down.
Because the
And
topography
you're
drops
looking
down.
up at his
Exactly.
property.
Exactly.
So, I mean, but it's not.
So you're standing, you're in a high point and you're looking down and it goes down 8 feet.
Well, don't you think his neighbor would, theoretically would have agreed to
Be
that
happy to-
fence site?
happy
Not
to
wanting
approve
to look
that.
at the, you know, the bus?
I think he would have.
Yeah, I don't know.
We just put.
No limit at all, it seems to me.
We have
The comments don't reflect
no,
no limit at all.
it's,
There's
it's,
just a lot
What
of-
do you think the comments say?
I'd say the majority of them were at 8 feet.
yeah.
Okay.
We put a 9 or 10 foot fence in our backyard. We did it in conjunction with the 3 neighbors that we back up to. It's not in Rollingwood because it's in the city of Austin and in Westlake Hills, the fence. So I didn't have to engineer it, although it got engineered anyway, but it's another matter. But as a neighbor, six of us, 6 neighbors, got together and put the same fence up, for the most part, doing that.
You share the cost too?
Yes, we did.
That's the proper way to do it, frankly, in my opinion.
And it was easy to do, and although some of the side fences are 6 foot because some of the neighbors did not want the shadow that go, and we just went, okay. So everybody worked it out, and we all came in, and same guys came in and put this same fence in and did a great job, as far as I know. Still up.
But
I
not
think
everybody
there-
has neighbors like that.
Well, and it was, I will tell you, getting 6 families to agree to a design was,
Involved a lot of alcohol, probably.
Sounds like a church committee.
it worked. All I'll say is, yes, I think there probably needs to be a height limitation on that, but there needs to be a, reasonable expectation, because like Steve, where he has a draw there, and I think that would have been where you get the special exception to that rule on that.
Would asking for a neighbor's approval not be enough in that case?
I don't think legally the lawyer is gonna, that our city lawyer is gonna say, you can put in the ordinance that you have to have your neighbor's approval to do this.
To go over 8 feet?
I'm gonna bet money that he's gonna say, hell no, you can't do that.
I thought there were other things.
And that's a bad governance anyway, I'll just tell you, because you're gonna get bad feelings on that, and it's better that we didn't do that.
Neighbors are gonna change.
But I think, yeah, they changed, but I think that I think there probably needs to be a limit, because yes, I should be able to build what I want, but then again, if I'm creating a barrier to sunlight on, to my neighbor, then that should be an issue on that.
So,
And yes, somebody one day is gonna build a 25-foot fence.
so for the sake of discussion, we could say, let's start at 8 feet. Because you're right, that's a popular number by way of the survey. And 8 feet, there's a lot of 8 feet around. But what would be the recourse if 8 feet wasn't enough? What do?
Special exception.
And what would the exception be? How do you do that? See, as you know, there's a house across the street from you, okay, that I think that the fellow's a doctor, and to the right of their house is another house a new house was just built, and they've got a swimming pool in the back that projects out. It was kind of a walled swimming pool, but when they are on their deck is even with the fence top to the yard that's to the side. So they're walking around and they're looking straight down on these people's yard. I don't know what the answer to that is.
Well,
The answer is, the neighbor needs to be able to build whatever he damn well wants as far
and
as
I
the
think
height
that
of
would
the
be,
fence.
that's one of those situations, and that's a good point. The pool was elevated to get a view of downtown at the same time, and that's why it was done. And I can see.
Well, are they then going to go ballistic if the neighbor puts a fence that's 8 feet above the pool deck?
It's not the view, it's just on the side, and he's looking on the back fence. The view that lot drops off. It wouldn't happen, because the lot drops off and it just wouldn't be there. The side is even with that. That's the problem, it's not the back.
Yeah, that specific comment is in the materials.
Yeah, I know.
The city gave permission for a pool that is even with the top of my neighbor's fence.
Yes.
So would that, if that neighbor who was offended by this pool next door, if they went and sought a special exception on what would the grounds be of that special
Well,
exception?
it'd be the privacy.
Privacy.
Privacy
Okay.
or shade or, you know,
What if the neighbor agrees to it?
you know, that's just a point that the Board of Adjustment would listen to.
Right.
But I don't think that that can be where your neighbor can have the veto power on that. I just don't believe that that would be, one, I don't think it'd be legal, and two, I'm pretty sure it'd be terrible good governance.
Well, a fence can be 1 inch, it doesn't have to be on the property line, it can be 1 inch on your side, you can build as high as you want, because it's now mine, I own the whole thing, both sides, okay? But if we are limiting ourselves to 8 feet, then what is the language that we put in for a special exception? It says, well, 8 feet, unless you can demonstrate what, that you're not getting privacy? What do you say? What do you say?
Privacy is an issue, and, you know,
I wonder if any other community dealt with this issue for us.
you know they have.
You know, maybe we can see what that,
Do we need a fence
that
subcommittee?
place west of here does.
Who wants to volunteer doing that?
Vet subcommittee. Oh, my God.
Luke, do you know
Before we
anything
do
about
a
what does
subcommittee.
Austin do? Because I went to one, friend's, it's been several years ago, but to, a party over in the West Austin area. And there was a pool, and I swear that fence was 20 or 25 feet tall around the backyard in Austin. Now, this was a lawyer who would have had the ability to get the city council to do pretty much whatever that lawyer wanted the city council to do, but I have no idea what the city of Austin's rules are about fences around.
I don't either, but,
No, specifically.
before we do it, you know, the easy answer is let's look at, we can get that from Westlake, we can get it from Lakeway. They've had to deal with this, I know. We have not, as
Who
far as I know.
wants to do it?
I will get those ordinances and see what they say.
Okay,
That's, that's the
okay,
start.
all in favor of having Tom be the guy who checks out the local ordinances on
will
fences,
do
say
that.
aye?
Aye.
I'm good with it, man. All right. Tom's on.
I wasn't gonna come if I knew we were gonna do this.
Well, that's part of the joy.
If you
Um,
hadn't been here, then you would have definitely
Okay,
got it.
so
you know?
you'll bring back your findings to
That
the
happened
next
to Brian.
CRCRC meeting, is that a promise?
Actually, no, I will not,
You
because
will
I am not gonna be here next.
Okay, you will.
I'll be on maybe Zoom at the best,
All right, okay, well, if,
but I'll
just,
have it
yeah,
delivered by
as
then.
quickly as you can, all right?
Yes.
All right, we are to regular agenda item number 8, which is continued discussion and possible action on enforcement recommendations. I don't know that we're gonna do anything with this.
It is 5 minutes to 7.
It is 5 minutes to 7,
Well,
but, you know,
let me, I can give you my comments on that very quickly.
Okay.
I think the enforcement needs to be, our enforcement recommendations need to be the maximum that's allowed by law. Because it gets knocked down as you go through that process anyway. And that is the only way we're gonna get big hammer, doesn't mean you have to use it, but you have to have it.
You know,
maximum,
Are we gonna make any recommendations, not necessarily in the code, about who will do the enforcement?
Well, I think actually the city, well, our building inspectors do that. You mean as the personnel?
the discussion around this was about
I
whether
think
or not
that's
there was gonna be a recommendation that we could use a little more human power in the process of enforcing.
I gotta tell y'all, I really believe that is a function of the mayor, the city administrator, and the city council.
But we can make a recommendation that you ought to look at it or something. But Ashley, it looks like you have something to say.
I was just gonna kinda echo what you just said there. I think the recommendations or the findings of the committee should be, where do you think we're lacking in certain areas? And then, we can take that from there and go to council with it. try to assess what we're doing. We're working on assessing our development services department right now, understanding, you know, what tasks are we spending most of our time doing? Are all of our contracts lining up where our different contractors that do different things, ATS and our city engineer and all of that, do they all, you know, meld nicely together, or does that need to be looked at? But I think just letting us know where we see issues is the most helpful thing, and then we can go forward with that to council.
Well, I thought that a couple of meetings ago, we also landed on that we would get some input from city staff that we could carry forward.
Mm-hmm. I know we talked about that at the meeting, and then I think we've had a couple follow-up conversations.
Yeah.
I don't know that we're at a point where, you know, I think even in that meeting I had talked about Westlake Hills they had brought someone in-house to have a building official, and that maybe that'd be something we'd be interested in, but I don't know at this time that we can make that recommendation, not
But
knowing.
we can.
Right, but I don't know, we need to know where the feeling is that there is deficiencies. I do feel like some of the things in the survey or some of the comments are possibly not understanding the rules. So I think sometimes if someone says, oh, I don't like the way that looks, well, you know, they're not enforcing the rules. I think there is some of that too. So I think we'd like to understand exactly where it is that we feel like there could be more enforcement.
Well, here's, I guess the question is, and you can be candid about this, you know, if you want this to go away, this item number 8, and we just don't talk about enforcement, I'm fine with that. But the reason why it's on here is because the word enforcement does come up an awful lot in the survey.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, you're right. I mean, you know, we're not enforcing things, you know, everybody's going over 35 feet. Well, no, that's probably not true.
Right.
But it's in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that at some point, as we're tidying up, or getting to the end of what it is we're supposed to do, there's gotta be a page in there about enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what that page says,
Sure.
you know?
Well,
Yeah,
the
I'm
eas-
definitely.
The
okay.
easy answer is to say that we think the city should look at the necessary enforcement personnel that's required to ensure that our rules are followed,
Mm-hmm.
period. And that's up to the city council, the mayor, and the city administrator to come up with that plan, in my opinion.
And I'm fine with it.
But I do like your comment that that is in the code that we're working with, there is enforcement provisions,
Yes.
and that the monetary penalties should be increased to the maximum allowable by law.
Absolutely.
And I'm all in favor of that.
I will say we have had a recent legal went through all of our enforcement provisions in our entire code, probably within the last 6 months. I'm sure it's an ordinance that's already been codified, but they made sure all of our fines and everything was consistent with state law. And so
Yeah.
I don't know that we can go any higher than what's in there. They probably all say up to, I think it's 500 in some cases, and it's more if there's different kind of
2,000 on
aspects.
Some of them
Yeah.
a day, per
Right.
day.
So those have been fully reviewed and are completely up to date as of this point.
Okay.
Recommending that we go with the higher ones, I'm not sure that that's like something we can really step into. That's more on the legal side or the court and the police department side. But
Whatever the highest the law allows, and then I will just say this, as far as I'm aware, that we've never charged anybody $2,000 a day.
I don't think we've not since I've been here. I don't think that's ever been. Actually, I can remember one where at least it was
Well, we threatened.
a few times. Yeah, I don't know that we got to multiple
No,
days
we
in a row.
threatened.
How
But
about $500 a
Mhm.
day?
Well, we
I don't
threatened
know.
that too, but I
Yeah.
don't
So
think
when
we-
someone goes and, let's say, this is a hypothetical, they go rip out a heritage tree that's not on their permit,
Mhm.
and they say, well, it's $500, that's a lot better than having to go get a 6-inch tree that's,
Well,
costs
per day.
$30,000.
But the ordinance says that, that there's an agreement to replace it, and to the extent that they don't do it, there's a $500 a day.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Yeah,
But at some
it's-
point we have
so
to. I mean, they
quick
can't
turnaround.
they can't regrow the tree. So we at some point have to decide. I mean, what is paying for that, whether error, mistake, or whatever intentional.
$100,000
I mean,
or so.
I mean, without some kind of requirement in our code that it costs a certain amount to remove a certain kind of tree, we're not. It's difficult to put a monetary.
But I mean, really, it's not prohibitive if they can just pay $500 and then they come
in the next day with a different tree plant permit application saying we're gonna replace this now, you know?
Yeah, I don't have a solution to that
Yeah.
problem. If we're not gonna put a fee on removing certain types of trees, which we don't, I think we currently just either allow it or don't, or have replanting requirements. I don't know how we can recoup money for somebody,
Well,
other than the fines that are allowed in our code.
It's not only the fines, because remember, we have in the past not given an occupancy permit for those situations.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I can think of one instance where it went on for years, not giving an occupancy permit.
And that is in the code currently.
Yes.
so-
Now, I've offered to build a stock that we could put out here, but so far our judge has not allowed me to do so.
Okay.
Where the scarlet letter.
Brooke Brown, when we adopted the new commercial code for tree protection, one of the provisions of that is that if a heritage or a protected tree is destroyed, then that permit can be pulled.
Yeah.
And until a solution is found to the violation, that work cannot go forward. And that's the most, doing a lot of reading for that, that was the most effective solution. Plus, there's the $2,000 a day maximum fine.
And I think that's in the residential tree code also, that they can stop construction. Pull
Issue a
permit.
stop work order.
Yes.
But
Yes,
does that actually happen?
That's,
Well, no, that has happened.
A few
and,
times.
I can tell you, remember, our judge and prosecutor our prosecutor works for the city, and our judge is appointed by the mayor and the city council. So, and I think that, and they are residents of, or at least the judge is a resident of Rollingwood.
Well,
I wonder about a motion to actually take this off the agenda for further meetings, and because it's the committee's opinion that the city is handling enforcement.
do you, if we do that, are you saying that within the comprehensive package that will ultimately happen, that we don't bring this into it?
I think you could do it very easily by saying that we expect that the mayor, city council, and city administrator will provide the necessary personnel to ensure that our ordinances are enforced to the letter.
The ones that are
That's
currently in
it.
place.
Is that a CRCRC statement that we want to make?
Well, I mean, that's the way I feel about it. I don't know how everybody else feels.
Personally, I think because it is so prominent within the comments, that we at least have to say something.
Well, we had those three, in the tree ordinance, we had those three recommendations that were
Yes.
were not recommendations, they were just
Yeah.
suggestions.
Yeah.
And it could be one of those, it seems to me.
But I think it's not only the tree, but it's all our ordinances. I mean,
Okay.
as a resident of Rollingwood, I expect everybody to obey the ordinances, period.
All right.
And I expect that the city, and that group, city council, mayor, and the city administrator are to ensure that those rules are followed.
What?
And if they come back and say, look, we gotta hire 3 people, your taxes are gonna go up, okay, that's what we have to, I mean, I'm personally,
I'm okay with that too.
but that's.
But that's what it takes to preserve Rollingwood the way that it is, and that's why we're here.
We can't, I will
Yeah.
just tell you, I don't think it's our place to micromanage the personnel requirements of the city. The city
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
we do that with our votes, and we tell the city council, the mayor, to make sure that the city's run right,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
And
Well-
I don't think we should be
Yeah.
doing that. But I do think that we could make, and it sounds like it's already been done, that our fines are all gonna be the maximum, that's allowed by law. And I think we should make that comment
We can do
and,
that.
and say we expect that the mayor, city council, and city administrator will ensure that they have adequate resources and personnel available to ensure that these ordinances are followed.
Let me take a crack at a paragraph to float for next meeting, and y'all can look at it and you say, well, does that represent the views of the CRCRC, or is that Dave?
Yep.
And and I would use a lot of your words that you had just said there. But I
Also,
would
get-
like to at least have a one-pager that we can slip into our binder whenever it's all done and say,
That's fine.
this is what we thought about enforcement.
Also
So-
include the fence ordinances in that, the deal.
Okay. We good?
Go ahead.
Take a
Move to
motion?
adjourn.
All right, motion to adjourn. All
Second.
in favor?
Second.
Okay. It is 7:06. And
Jerry,
I
thank you for your
call
input.
this